Billy Donovan had an interview on 670 The Score where he finally may start seeing the vision of the future for this team that we've all kind of wanted to see. He talked about how Matas Buzelis' minutes will not fall with the return of Patrick Williams. We'll also talk about the return of Patrick Williams and how Billy Donovan may finally modernize the style of this team even further than what the Bulls did this offseason. All that plus a preview of the Bulls versus Hornets game and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off talking about Billy Donovan's interview on 670 The Score. And there was a lot of things said here in regards to Matas Buzelis that really stood out. And kind of like Billy Donovan's waking up a little bit. He said this in regards to Matas Buzelis and his role may changing with Patrick Williams' pending return. He says this: I do think for Julian Phillips and for Matas, their development for our team, we need those guys. They need to be out there. I do think Matas has done a very good job. I think he continues to get better. I think he's going to be able to do more things off the dribble as he gets more experience. We're going to have to evolve out of two of those guys at times being on the floor at once together. But then how do you balance that and match it when you have enough ball handling and play creation out there as well? I don't necessarily think Patrick Williams coming back for a period of time, he's going to have a minutes restriction. I don't think that he will bleed into Matas. I think getting to a point where Matas and Patrick Williams playing is something that would be good. Now, this is something for those that watched kind of my video last night after, breaking news video after basically it was announced that Patrick Williams would officially be returning. I talked about this potential lineup, right? Is that while a lot of Bulls fans, understandably so, have talked so much about who's going to start Matas, Patrick Williams, is Matas Buzelis going to take Patrick Williams' starting spot? It does seem like Patrick Williams could, start off coming off the bench upon his return, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But hearing that Billy Donovan is now starting to see the vision of Matas Buzelis and Patrick Williams playing together, that is a potential future of this team. And I don't mean like as far as Patrick Williams is like this huge building, like thing that you build around per se. But I think as you build a team, having versatile forwards are things that you want to do. And I talked a little bit about that this offseason, right? When people said, well, Matas Buzelis is clearly just a power forward. And I'm like, no, he can play either forward position, and Pat can do the same thing. And that's kind of what you want in the modern day basketball. Like when you look at the switchability, right, especially with Patrick Williams' defense, how Matas Buzelis has grown as a defender as well over these games. Like Matas Buzelis is really becoming a solid defender, right? Again, not really good on ball yet consistently, but he's showing tremendous growth already in his rookie year. And I think that just comes down to the mentality that Matas Buzelis has. In the fact that he's just an aggressive player, and he's not somebody who's gonna sit there and just take things lightly, right? If you cook him, he's gonna be like, hey, nah, man, you ain't finna keep cooking me, right? And that goes down to the mindset that Matas Buzelis has, and that's what I really like from him. And so, if you have these guys that are playing, right, and keep in mind when you have Matas Buzelis and Patrick Williams on the court, what does that do? That eliminates some of the size issues that this team has. Now, I say that thinking that these guys are going to both play forward positions. Watch Billy Donovan play one of them at center, and it completely ruins this point that I'm making. But when I talk about modernizing the game of basketball, right? What are the Chicago Bulls doing right now? They are playing a fast-paced team, right? They're playing a fast-paced style. And so if you can get to that pace and space style, that's where you're starting to get some from, right? The Chicago Bulls right now are leading in pace. They're second in three-point attempts. They're fifth in three-point shooting percentage. What's the one thing that Patrick Williams has done well? That even with Patrick Williams' naysayers on offense, you can't deny. Over 140 games over the last 3 years, Patrick Williams has shot 40% from three. 40% from three. That's a huge sample size, and that's not just a flash in the pan. What is Matas Buzelis starting to do? He's starting to shoot the three ball more consistently. What's one thing that the Bulls also lack? Size, right? We're always talking about how this team does not have size. When you pair in playing Matas Buzelis and Patrick Williams at your forward spots, right? So you're having a almost 6'9" player and a 6'10" player. And Matas Buzelis is almost 6'10", with both those over 7 feet wingspans. Then you add that. What else do the Chicago Bulls have at guard? we have players that play with relative size at that guard position that are also solid rebounders. Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Josh Giddey, these are all guys that can play the point guard position, that have pretty good positional size, even with Kobe White's wingspan, because I know somebody's going to go to, but Haize the wingspan. You have all guys that do that, and they rebound the ball well. Giddey, Kobe, and Ayo are all guards that are towards the upper part of the league as far as rebounding percentage for a guard. So even with Matas and Patrick Williams' rebounding totals not necessarily being the best, right, when you look at it, when you have a total team that can rebound, and keep in mind, you're either looking at Jalen Smith or Vooch at that center spot, and they're both really solid rebounders as well. That opens up the floor so much. What are both those players doing as well? Hitting the three decently. Vooch really well. Jalen Smith is kind of falling back down to earth, but we know that he can stretch out a three as well there at times. Again, I know I'm getting excited, and we got to see it work. And I think initially it's probably going to look ugly. I would not be surprised if initially, as we play those lineups, it doesn't necessarily look the best. But I do think that as things go on, that we're going to see that look like a pretty good lineup for the Chicago Bulls. So, that's just something to look at. It's something to actually be excited. The fact that with Billy Donovan as well, and I want to say this because I already know my boy Winton is getting it typing. But when it comes down to it, you also got to make sure that Billy Donovan is actually going to do it. Because I do think that there is going to be that chance that it doesn't necessarily look the best right away. And if that does happen, you want to make sure that Billy Donovan is going to go back to it and let them go through it, right, and figure their way out through it. But I think overall, this is an exciting time for Bulls basketball, right? Because we're getting back to we're getting to some things that we've wanted to see for a while. And to highlight the point of Matas Buzelis' three-point shot coming along, when you look at it, in the month of October, he didn't hit a single three. In the month of November, he was taking about 2.5 three-pointers per game, hitting that at a 35% clip. In the month of December, he's taking 4 three-pointers per game. He's hitting that at a 50% clip exactly. He's making 2 per game. Also, you chip in his block at 1 block per game. I'm telling you guys right now, this could be something that is, again, it's just modernizing the style of play for your team, and that's what you want. And I'm not saying this is necessarily the future forward lineup. I've talked about it before. Asa Newell is one of the guys on my early Chicago Bulls draft board. I'm not gonna lie. If he ends up drafted, that's another forward that you can add. I think that either way, Billy Donovan waking up to actually playing players with size together, which is what the Bulls have needed for a while. And I get it. You're going to play Zach LaVine. You're going to play Kobe. You're going to play Ayo. You're going to play Josh Giddey, which is going to lead to some 3-guard lineups. Make no mistake about it. It's going to lead to some – it's almost with the makeup of this roster, and I didn't even mention Lonzo Ball as well, right? You're going to get some 3-guard lineups. But even Lonzo's another player that has positional size, and he's a solid rebounder as a guard, right? Before he went down with his initial injury, he was our second leading rebounder as a point guard. So, there's things that this could work. And I'm not saying that this is going to all of a sudden lead to the Chicago Bulls winning a huge, larger portion of the games this season, but it's important for the future of this team. And it's good that Billy Donovan's starting to see not only the present, but the future of this team as well. And so, we'll see how that develops for this team also. But Patrick Williams, upon making his return, he's getting to get back. And Patrick Williams is going to have to really adjust, right? Billy Donovan said in this, Patrick is going to come back with a minutes restriction. So now you start to think about how you get him back into the flow of things, knowing that you have a certain amount of minutes that he has to play with. That may mean him coming off the bench for a little while. That may mean him eventually coming back to the starting role. That's not surprising, right? And, Billy Donovan did share that Patrick Williams is going to be on a 20 to 24-minute restriction. That's not too shocking there, right? Especially with it being a foot injury. But while Patrick Williams' season hasn't necessarily been the season that a lot of Bulls fans wanted to see from P. Will, especially looking at the fact that, DeMar was gone. Was that going to open up the court some for P. Will? Was that going to open up more shot opportunities for P. Will? And the thing that I've always said is that P. Will is P. Will. And at this point, and that's not to shit on him because players can change, right? And I've learned not to put a cap on players, but my own expectations for P. Will have just come down to this. What he gives offensively is a plus to what he does defensively. Now, would I like to see Patrick Williams take more shots? Yeah, you look over the last 3 seasons, 2022-23, 8.3 shots. 2023-24, 8.3 shots. 2024-25, so far through 15 games, he missed 10, 8.9 shots. Now, he's shooting it at a career worst percentage at 37%. He's still hitting the 3 ball at 39%, which is really good. And he's taking almost 5 3-pointers per game. But P. Will offensively has just not necessarily been or taken that next step that we hope, right? And I think ultimately that's okay, depending on how your team changes, right? And so what P. Will is and how Billy Donovan uses him more specifically is really as a big defensive piece, right? He guards a lot of centers, and he actually has a really good defensive rating with guarding those centers. And so, Patrick Williams, we've seen him guard players on the perimeter and been solid. Now we're seeing him guard more post players and be solid. Patrick Williams is a really good defensive Swiss Army knife for Billy Donovan. You can really throw almost any look at him and have him do some things. Now, of course, you don't want him guarding the quicker guards in the NBA, but as, we keep going through this thing and, Bulls are still committed to Patrick Williams, 23 years old. It doesn't seem like they're going to move off him anytime soon. I say that and then watch they move him at the trade deadline. But I think overall, what the expectations with P. Will in his return are just keep doing the things that he was already doing solidly and just add to this team, right? Add that size, that defensive piece that we've been wanting to see from P. Will. He's on the season. He's averaging 9.9 points per game, 5 rebounds, 2.3 assists. So you want to see him keep doing things, right? And just acclimate back as it comes to it, right? It's going to take some time for P. Will. I won't say that P. Will's necessarily a slow healer per se, but with P. Will's already kind of passive nature has really led to some things already kind of being down for P. Will, right? So but getting everybody back is really important. Now, we also got some updates on some other players, like Vooch may miss this game tonight. Josh Giddey may miss this game tonight. And we'll see what that means for those guys. But, the Bulls getting back fully healthy and what fully healthy looks like for them, I think is important at this part of the season to continue to see how things can develop for this team and how they can continue to develop, right? That's what this season was built around. It was around development. And we've seen development from some guys. Now, P. Will hasn't necessarily made the leap or step that I had hoped that he made, but players like Dalen Terry have. Dalen Terry has absolutely made that step up, right? Now, that step up still looks like a role player in the NBA for him, but he has made a step, right? And that's really good when it comes down to it. And so when you look at how we were coming into the season, like play Modest. Modest is playing. Per Billy Donovan's words, we got to see if the actions back that up. Modest is still going to keep playing, which is really good for Matas Buzelis to keep playing the game of basketball. We wanted to see a step from Patrick Williams. Haven't necessarily seen that the way that we wanted to, but we are playing those young guys, the Julian Phillips, the Dalen Terrys. These are why veterans like Torrey Craig aren't playing, who I did think was still going to play coming into the season. And really, Torrey Craig has become more of an insurance policy for Billy Donovan, in which, hey, if Pat's down, when Julian's down, then we're going to play Torrey Craig. But other than that, he's not really in the lineup in the rotation. So, when you look at when we step back and at the 25-game mark, look at some of the questions that we had coming into the season, we've gotten some pretty solid answers on them. Is the youth movement real? Yes, it's real. Is it necessarily having the results that we wanted to? Not quite, but it's still there. Was Kobe White's season last year a fluke? No, it doesn't look like it was a fluke, but it doesn't look like he's necessarily going to make that a next step. This may be who Kobe White is, and I say maybe because his usage has changed. We talked on yesterday's episode how the way that he has to score has really changed, where a lot of mid-range and dives, whereas now it's a lot of above-the-break threes and catch-and-shoots for him, more so than what it was last year, which he's become pretty effective at, right? So you have those things that are there as well. And overall, that's a question that, we've gotten a solid enough answer to. And he's adjusted to it pretty well. We still want to see him, turnovers got to get down for Kobe White, but, we'll see when it comes down to that. Another question that we had coming into this, Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. How was Zach going to play upon his return? Zach has come back and basically been Zach. Vooch has come back and been better than what he's been at any point in time in a Bulls uniform. And so those are really good things that are helping this team, right? And then Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey is always a difficult conversation to have because when you look at, I think it's this, right? I think there are two different groups of people wanting to have two very different types of conversations when it comes to Josh Giddey, and thus it leads to frustration on both sides, right? I tend to look at everything number-based, right? I root things in numbers and analytics and stats. I root things in those type of things. And some people, and I'm not saying that it's a wrong way to do it, root it in who they feel Josh Giddey could be, and are the Bulls playing him in the way that they view that he can be. I look at it in stats. I also look at the other things and say, hey, that's why I talk about lineups so much. You can maybe get better out of it when it comes to lineups, but as it is right now, Josh Giddey has given some really good flashes. I think that's fair to say. He's had some times of looking really, really good, being in rhythm, even in defense, some of the times where he gets confidence built defensively. But when it comes down to it, statistically, it's been, it's been some concerns there, right? 52.6% true shooting percentage. That's not good. That's just not good. I mean, that's objectively not good for a guard to shoot that badly, right? And then you look at the defense, a 116.9 defensive rating. That's not good. It's not good. And so there have been some areas where Josh Giddey, when you're on the court, where the stats don't really show what he's doing out there. I think that one thing that how Josh Giddey creates open lanes for players with how he moves intentionally, it doesn't always lead to him getting the assist, but it does lead to creating an open shot for players. And that's something that you have to look at as well when it comes to the overall impact. But, that question that we came in wondering and asking, is Josh Giddey and Kobe White going to be able to work together? It's been a mixed bag, and it's been more bad than good in that mixed bag as far as them. Both these guys look better when they're playing with Io as their backcourt mate. That's just the objective thing in it, right? And so that's something that you also have to look at, man. And we'll see how it continues to go. I think that overall, like, it's gonna be something. Like, Josh Giddey is still creating open shots at the 96th percentile in the NBA and shots created. Now, I use that stat more than assists because that shows that he's creating opportunities for assists, and that's a better stat to show, hey, I created this look. Now, if they didn't hit the shot, it doesn't take that into consideration. So, he's doing good things there. It's not necessarily been what we've seen before from Josh Giddey. And this team also isn't just that. We're not a good basketball team. I mean, that's just what it comes down to as well. The Bulls are not a good basketball team at all by any stretch of the imagination. We're just not. And so that one thing coming into the season that we looked at is like where the Bulls are going to stand. And, I'm somebody that, and I know not everybody agrees with this, I look at your record. I look at the point differential, your point differential is your point differential. And the Chicago Bulls right now sit in a place where they have the 10th best point differential in the NBA. Now, that can change over a game stretch, so that sits the Bulls right outside that area of potentially making the play-in. Now, they are on pace to win 32 games. The Bulls are on pace to win 32 games this season, and I think that it shows where this team is. I think this team is a 32-win team. What did I say coming into the season? 30 to 35 wins is where I had the Bulls. And they're playing like a team that has that type of projection. So, we'll see what it comes out of it. We'll see how it develops. And overall, I'm just going to leave it there. But all right, let's get into the last topic for today. The Bulls do play basketball again today for the first time since Sunday, which was a really long break. And in that time, Lonzo's probable in this game. Vooch and Josh Giddey are questionable. LaMelo Ball has already been ruled as out in this game. And that opens up an opportunity to beat on this the Charlotte Hornets team that, is going to be missing their best player in LaMelo Ball. Now, they got players that can absolutely step up, make no mistakes about it. You got players on that team that can score some points when need be. And because of that, you got to look at that and say, hey, all right, what are we doing here? And the Bulls' terrible defense always kind of lends itself to being susceptible to a team that just refuses to go away. But the Charlotte Hornets are they're not a great offense either. They're the fourth worst offense in the league at only averaging 107 points per game. Now, that comes down with them having a young team, them not always performing the best, things like that. But this is a game that the Chicago Bulls can win. And just comes down to how much do the Bulls really show something this game. Now, the Charlotte Hornets, for what it's worth, right, one of the reasons they're able to win some basketball games is that they are top 15 and they're top half of the league defensively. So while they don't necessarily score a bunch of points because they are towards the top of the league defensively, it gives them a little bit more room to wiggle with, right? Now, they only have 7 wins on the season. So there you go on that one. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games. So they're already not really playing with a whole lot of momentum on top of that. But and this is one of those opportunities. What have we said before? All right, is that the Bulls don't always beat teams that on paper they should beat because that team's missing their best player or whatnot. This is one of those games where the Bulls got to come in and do that thing. Like Brandon Miller is averaging over 20 points per game. Miles Bridges is averaging 16 points per game. Trey Mann's averaging 14 points per game. You got to be prepared for this team. And one thing that we've seen a lot that happens to the Bulls, I don't know about more than any other team in the league, but it happens to us a whole hell of a lot, that's for damn sure, is that we run into that situation where we let role players go off on us, right? Or because teams are missing their best player, it changes other players' roles and who needs to step up. and then the Bulls end up, getting cooked by somebody you've barely heard of. So hopefully the Bulls don't allow that today. There's always a chance of that. And hopefully the Bulls, after a long break, come out of this firing. They're coming out of a long break with players returning, and let's see if the Bulls can get the job done. But we'll be here live covering it. We'll do a pregame show today. It's going to be a little bit later, closer to the game than what I usually like to have it, but we will have a pregame show today. We'll also do the halftime hangout and postgame shows all live on the channel. So make sure you guys stay in tune with us for that. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related. That's thanks to you guys. Everything Chicago Bulls related, that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.